So I'm here to introduce our first of two presenters here in this first section. And the idea will be for Mathilde to take 20 minutes in presenting, and then we'll have 20 minutes of discussion. And then I will introduce Adelina. Mathilde Frey comes from Walla Walla, but she hasn't been at Walla Walla University her whole life. She was born in communist Romania, got her formative education there, up through getting a baccalaureate, immigrated the first time to West Germany. She got her degree, her bachelor's degree, another bachelor's degree in theology at Seminar Marienau, Darmstadt. She pastored for 5 years in Germany, and then she went to Andrews, and she got her PhD in Hebrew, the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament. Her dissertation title is The Bible in the Pentateuch, an Exegetical and Theological Study. She went in 2008 to the Adventist Institution of Higher Education, AISIS, in the Philippines. There she taught Old Testament. She headed up the master's degree in theology. And then in 2014, she went to Walla Walla, where she is now as professor of the Hebrew Bible and Old Testament. She particularly likes a close reading of the Hebrew Bible. She has authored the Deuteronomy commentary for the Andrews Study Bible, and she's currently writing the commentary on the book of Judges for the Adventist International Bible Commentary. We're very happy that you're here. Thank you very much for coming. Let's give Mathilde a hand.
Thank you so much for having me here this morning. I'm very new to this society. I'm not a philosopher, and I don't know why I dared to submit a proposal. My world is very much in the Bible itself and in the text, and I just love that. But I loved your title of the conference, and it fits right in there. So yes, here I am. And then I'm put first in the morning. So please help me on those parts. And I'm here also to get feedback and see what we can do with stories that we are so well acquainted with and use so much in all kinds of ways. So I would like to start my presentation with, I love this presentation by Thich Nhat Hanh, who is speaking about the meditations in nature. And his quote is, "The miracle is not to walk on water, but on the earth." So I give you a little pause. The creation accounts in Genesis 1-3 focus on the earth. And I try to make that clear in the classroom. We deal with land, with soil, with water, with living beings. We deal with beings that exist and breathe. And they live together, then they move together. So that is the introduction to the first story in Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But then it quickly moves to the earth and zooms in on the earth. And the second story as well, in the day when God made earth and heaven, and there was an open field, inhospitable and empty and bare, and the ground is what we are going to see be the focus of God and of the human. So God is ready to get into the ground. Is the story of creation still relevant in the time we live in and in the future? Is there room? Thank you so much. Is there room for it in a world that that focuses on what we call in the philosophical studies post-human? So to look into that, I had to read up on what is posthumanism. I did not know. I did not know transhumanism and so on. So this morning, I just want to focus on one little piece that I was able to learn about by reading philosophical papers and books. So broadly speaking, posthumanism is a philosophical framework that questions the primacy of the human and the necessity of the human as a category. While humanism appeals to our shared humanity as a basis for creating community, posthumanism criticizes this way of thinking as being limited and full of implicit biases. Some posthuman philosophers even claim that humanism is not only false, but also destructive. So here are some few arguments that I would like to mention, or critics that are put out by philosophical studies on posthumanism. First, when we say human, we don't really mean all humans. Posthuman thinkers believe that the concept of the human is in fact intertwined with things like colonialism, sexism, and racism. And while an appeal to our shared humanity may be beautiful in theory, a brief look at history shows a different story. The idea of the human has historically been used to oppress whoever and whatever, and who was considered non-human. Rosi Braidotti makes the point that our understanding of the human is based on the concept of the Da Vinci Vitruvian man. She argues that slaves, native populations, and women were historically excluded from the category of what she calls fully human. Consequently, they were barred from enjoying equal rights with the white male. Humanism is therefore far from innocent. It comes with the baggage of Western supremacy, patriarchy, and oppression. The abstract ideal man, says Lucy Regerai, the abstract ideal man as the symbol of classical humanity is very much a male of white, European, handsome, and able-bodied species. Measured against this ideal man is everything else. Posthumanism rejects this dialectical scheme of thought, where difference or otherness play a constitutive role, marking off the sexualized other, which is the woman, the racialized other, the native, and the naturalized other, the animals, the environment, the earth. And this is a quote by Braidotti. The second critic, we are not as special as we think we are. Well, it is commonly accepted, an accepted fact that humans are essentially animals. We continue to place ourselves in opposition to animals and other life forms. Posthumanism suggests that we should stop thinking of ourselves as superior to the rest of the planet and accept that we are part of nature. After all, science has long ago proven that we share about 90% of the DNA with apes especially, and recent discoveries have shown that we have a lot in common with plants and mushrooms, and more than we think. So the brotherhood of humans, animals, plants is deeply rooted in ancient and cosmologies of ancient or native people. Chief Seattle of the Suquamish and Squamish tribes writes, "We are part of the earth and it is part of us. The perfumed flowers are our sisters. The bear, the deer, the great eagle, these are our brothers. The rocky crests, the dew in the meadow, the body heat of the pony, and man all belong to the same family." Posthumanism asks us to remember our true place in the world. We are an integral part of nature. The philosophers who work with or have very much advanced the concept of posthumanism work with what are considered rhizomes. And here I'm speaking about Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari. Rhizomes come from the Greek rhizoma. Rhizome is often taken like that which is a root. It's synonymous to the root in botany, in a plant. In the philosophical world, in their book, 1,000 Plateaus, Gilles Deleuze and Philippe Guattari use the rhizome to describe a process of existence and growth that does not come from a single central point of origin. And that single point of origin in the concept or in the world of biblical studies or in the world of Christianity is the tree. The tree which comes from the seed and then grows up into the trunk and then branches out. The tree in that concept is the hierarchical world of the Western logic and Western philosophy. In the postmodern world, Deleuze and Guattari argue the grand narrative falls apart. They offer instead the rhizome with the image of the fungus, which is an organism of interconnected living fibers, and this has no central point. It has no origin, it has no particular form or unity or structure. It does not start somewhere from one single point of entry, but it has multiple entry points, and it is not specifically structured like the tree. So an example of this is what we just now, everybody here basically uses, the World Wide Web. This is a rhizomatic structure. It has no point of origin, no central focus. Nothing controls or shapes that. So the web simply grows because we are in it. You can take out any link or any website without damaging anything about the internet in that sense. Some goals of posthumanism are to decentralize what at this point is still considered that which brings us together in structural ways. So if we see ourselves as separate from the natural world, we don't have to feel bad about exploiting it and mistreating other life forms. But the natural world isn't the only victim here. It's also the way, it's also us. It's also the way we think in that way we separate ourselves from others and the world. So seeing ourselves as outside of nature contributes to the feeling of alienation and fragmentation. Embracing posthumanism could heal this perceived gap between the human and the non-human, and that is a goal of posthumanism in this sense. I would like to now go and, after having laid a little bit of a groundwork for this, to look into the biblical story of Genesis 2, perhaps also a little bit of chapter 3. So one major aspect of posthumanism is the concept of being present, being immanent, being in the world and not separate or disconnected. The Genesis chapter 2 there is clearly that possibility as well in the text. And it starts right out with Yahweh, the Yahweh Elohim in the second creation story, who is the the God who is present, the God who is here, the God who exists. And then in Genesis 2, this is the God who is in the world, digging into the ground. So from that aspect, there is a possibility to recognize and emphasize this aspect of God versus the transcendental deity. This concept of God then will spill over into the creation that is described in the story. We have the creation of the human, Adam, not the man or the male or the name of a man, but the Adam who is taken from the dust of the Adamah and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the Adam is a human, a living being. This formation that is described here is deeply rooted in the soil, in the ground. Numerous interpreters speak here of the earthling, the groundling, and the dust of the ground. In addition to that, is also an interesting aspect that is mentioned in the text. Often, I believe, we forget the dust in the Bible. And we do pay attention to the Adamah if we work with the Hebrew text, but there is the dust, and the dust is that which is taken from the Adamah. And when you continue to look into the biblical text, the dust is used in two major concepts in the Bible. One is, of course, the aspect of mortality. The non-living being is here referred to with the dust. And you continue into chapter 3, where the serpent is going to eat dust, but live. Dust you will eat all the days of your life. And just a few verses later, dust you are, and to dust you shall return, is the word given to Adam. So the aspect of mortality is interesting in these two places. But then when you continue reading into the rest of the Hebrew Bible, you find the dust in the sense of life. Your descendants will be like the dust of the Adamah. So there is this twofold ways. From the mortality, you transition to hope, to life, to future, with the same concept of dust. To bring this back into the post-human concept or philosophical concept, I would like to cite Beatrice Brutteaux. Our personhood, is not a product of God's action, something left over after the action has ceased. Rather, it is God's action in the very actuality of acting. It's being, it's living, it's creating, and not we have been done and everything is done. We are not a finished process in this sense, a finished product. We are not a thing but an activity. This is why God's activity of ecstatically moving out to us is an act of coinciding with our activity, just as our union with God will be our ecstatically moving out to God as an act of coinciding with God's activity. This activity which we are and which God is the act of creative freedom of initiative, of self-originating and self-giving. The next part in the story of creation is about the human. The human is very much present in the story of Genesis 2 as well. The human is made from the Adamah, so is rooted in the Adamah, and whereas in Genesis 1, the Adam is made in the image of God, imago Dei. In Genesis 2, we have the Adam as imago terrae, the image of the ground, if you will, of the earth. It is well known to readers of the Hebrew Bible that humanity created identity in Genesis 2 is established by a remarkable wordplay, and I have mentioned this before. So the Adam from the Adamah. The Adam is fashioned from the Adamah, the human from the fertile humus, a human soul from the soil. Soil, the ancient tale contends, is integral to humanity's makeup. This human creature, not yet distinctively male, is inseparably tied to the ground from which he came. This is William Brown in his commentary on Genesis. Another element that very much pays attention to the earthly context here in Genesis 2 that we often quickly skip over is the mentioning of the rivers. There is the river and the rivers, and they enclose, if you will, the entire garden, but they also spread out into all world. The next are the trees. Now here I do need a little bit help. Maybe if we get to that part in our questioning afterwards. There is the tree of life, and there is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they are in the center of the garden. But note, there are many other trees. You shall eat, says God, from every tree, from every tree. So there are many others, not just the two. And often we forget about those. The trees in the middle of the garden clearly have connotations of centeredness, connotations of hierarchy, and then not to talk about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the dualistic concept that is very much present. And then that will become a basis for our way how we understand life in the afterwards, especially in the theological world. So Bradotti has argued that life is not the right of the human species alone, rather it is the very force that connects various species, and so cuts across them. Life is a transversal alliance across species and among post-human subjects that opens up unexpected possibilities for the recomposition of communities, for the very idea of humanity, and for ethical forms of belonging. The last part I would like to bring up is the human in the sense of being present, being aware and connected. The human is first noted in the community with animals. God brings the animals to the human, and the human being is to call the animals and give them names. The naming here in the ancient context, as far as I have learned about, is all about identifying, and identifying also establishes hierarchy and assigns value to beings. So that is another part that I feel would need more exposition. Then the piece about the helper suitable for him has been taken into the hierarchical explanation, but I would like to argue here for the helper suitable, and this is not the idea of suitability in the sense of they fit together like puzzle pieces into each other. I heard that explanation too, but in the concept of being suitable, there is this concept of communication between them. The word is explicitly in the center of the composite form of suitable, kenekdo, and the verb is nagat, which is all about.
I'm sorry.
Which is all about like communicating and speaking, telling each other. The text has that. I think that should be much more emphasized in our expositions on man-woman concepts here in the story. Then, of course, the part where woman is presented to the man, and then they are spoken of as naked but not ashamed. And that world of nakedness and no shame, the Hebrew Bible should not be singled out for the human body and the innocence between two beings, but the concept of nakedness is very much like deeply connected to the world of exile, to the world of the prisoners who are taken into exile and then stripped off their clothes. And the nakedness context here is all about taking away everything of who they are, who you are, and emptying this being of self-worth and self-value in that sense. It is then possibly, I suggest, the reversal that we are reading here in Genesis 2, that the nakedness without shame is only possible if there is nothing that one or the other can show off to the other, if you will. like who they are and what they have and what rank they exist in the world. I believe my time is up. I would be happy to talk a lot more on Genesis 3, but here we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mathilde. And before we go to our Q&A, we have some chairs to be brought in and some more people who are coming. It looks like we officers may have underestimated the popularity of Adventist philosophers.
Where do we put it?
Marina, we could put some chairs over here.
There are more.
So the panel should probably be here. They're gonna do their Q&A. Oh, we're not doing that part. Marina, is it just pressing this? Not yet. Not yet. Not here, not today.
AdventistPhilosophers.org and put that password.
Okay, Matthew, please.
I just have
Okay, everybody, could we have your attention? Matthew Cortman has a question. He's going to project this for the whole audience. Could we close the door here so we? Okay. Okay, everybody. Our dialogue is beginning.
This can either be a comment that just sits there, or maybe you have a thought on it, but I couldn't help but think, given the context of the title, a little lower than Elohim, and Elohim having that duality of meaning, both as a name for God, but also as a reference to angelic beings. Given that in our theology, we read Genesis through the lens of Revelation and John's Apocalypse, identifying the serpent as Satan, an angelic being. Found it kind of interesting that given the amount of attention you were giving to the relationship of humanity to the dirt, to the dust, that it also seems to give a lot of weight to the serpent's connection to the ground and the world, in the sense that it is one of the creatures. And I wonder what that does in terms of our thinking of our human anthropology, our nature, as well as to think of thinking of the serpent as an angelic being, also being associated equally among the creatures, and both as a humbling fact of how we view the angelic world, but also an uplifting fact in the sense of our connection as a little lower than Elohim.
Yes, the serpent is said to be more than every other created animal. So in that sense, compared to the animals, but different in that way. And animals are formed just like the human. The word is literally present. That's just like the human from the Adamah. So there is clearly that connection in that sense. I think the rest is up to, or needs to be looked at from the perspective of the history of interpretation. How, and you said like Elohim as angelic or Elohim, and then also Satan, serpent as Satan, which speaks to how this story, this text has been used in different ways. I would love to learn more about that history of interpretation and go back to possibly recover whatever possibility we have, to see what we can do with that serpent. And I'm sure Jewish tradition and rabbinic Talmud has here a lot to contribute. on that sense before we get to the dragon in Revelation 12.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Finally, I understand the nakedness in, thank you, in Genesis 2. I've been pondering that for ages. I'm so happy for your explanation. So my question is about the tree. I've been pondering that and I still don't have an answer. If it was forbidden to know good and evil, why is it then that religions, especially Western religions, have just made it their centerpiece to talk about good and evil? This is bad, this is good, this is bad, this is good. You will choose between good and bad. So why have we fallen into this forbidden knowledge, I guess, with the question? Since it was forbidden, shouldn't we then therefore go beyond this binary that Nietzsche is proposing, to go beyond good and evil? Should we be following Nietzsche instead of what we have been doing for centuries? What's your take on that?
Okay, can you hear in the back? Okay.
So that part about good and evil, the first text that about it in chapter 3 is if you eat, you will be like God. And then at the end, towards the end of the chapter, God speaks. So first the serpent speaks. At the end of the chapter, God speaks, and God says, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, right? And I still remember your dad's explanation on that verse. And I cannot get over that, because he would say that part should read, the man was like one of us, knowing good and evil. That would change the whole story of good and evil if that would be followed. So if it's taken as a verb, like in a story form text, the serpent was more crafty or naked. The man was like one of us, knowing good and evil. And then we would have to go back to chapter 1 when we have the story about the creation. Let us make man in our image according to our likeness. So that's the thing. So to the idea of good and evil, as far as I have been able to understand, I would take it into this in the sense of I don't have to know evil. I have to be able to discern what is good and evil.
Isn't that the tree rule, forbidden tree, to discern good and evil?
Yes, before you take the fruit.
Wait. Okay, I gotta think on that.
Might the undergirding question be, how literally do we take these correct readings of a text and or not?
Well, I'm going to do a cop out and say, so why do we take the woman?
Well, I think we're going to be talking about gender. Yes, please.
Thank you for trying to mitigate a little bit the post-human critical human exceptionalism by showing that in the Bible we have a more immanent quality, dust, the tree, but all of these looks, after all, are legal concessions until you can tackle the big of history. That is what posthumanists critics are. For this history, radical history, never change. That's what makes difference. So, what is the analysis of? Because all the concessions we make in the Old Testament, after all, live intact, strong category of history. We need to, I think, to revision that. I mean, not to give it up because it's really possible, but what came afterwards is certainly has become very true.
Could everybody hear the question up here?
I read an article that actually you started with the line about eschatology. We need to become post-historic. Can I use that in this context as well?
is for the next month.
Post-historical and post-Christian even. That's a hard thing in the world we are looking at. Christian scholars. Post-historical. Because it will take on so much larger and deeper meaning if we are trying to read the text. I mean, I believe we have done to a certain point, we have done something like that because we are able to take the serpent into Revelation 12, but then we stopped it. We didn't continue because there are the other characters that are addressed in the story, man and woman, and we are just focused on the serpent and have not tried to understand. So what is the man via the Adam, man and the woman in that same story, just like surrounding the serpent. So if serpent is taken as Satan, that's not history. Then we need to do some work on the context of man and woman.
So are you advocating making a post-historical move in our exegesis of the ancient text?
I'm not saying we need to like reject the historical part. Saying we need to like widen it and open it up to greater possibilities.
Okay, yeah, toward the back, yes.
Along those lines, thank you for sharing the graphic on interconnectedness and the mycelial network, if you will.
Yes.
Theologically, what's that? That a full paper to explore what that means for us theologically. What might you do?
I don't think I am that far advanced in my study on this part, but I do like it because it allows room. It allows room for perspectives. It allows room for other views. I am not the one who has the ultimate, and I am able to like learn and see what contributions there might be from outside to come. And by the way, to say inside and outside, that already blows the post-human thing. So we can't do that. And so we struggle. What I'm saying, we struggle on these parts.
Yes.
A separate finished action, but God's, you say the word actuality of God's action, and that's where it just strikes me, I'm listening to that from the lens of research on trauma here, and the idea that is so often coming up with that is that trauma processes like this is frozenness, like repetitiveness. Relationality is emergent, and we don't even have to be like coming up with a relational situation. So I co-create space, we co-create God since we want to co-create space. No concept ever, right? For God somehow are in this non-repetitive. And so that is not pointed out, but I feel like it's incredibly important, especially for something like life. Kind of finding life.
Okay, she agrees with that. No further comment.
We have talked about this, by the way. Yes.
But the rest of us haven't heard that conversation. Okay, yes.
The nature of your paper is becoming human, and I just wonder, in a highly hyper technological age, where we offload a lot of our human capabilities to machines, how have you found this narrative that you're proposing? Be maybe a blueprint or an idea to reconnect with ourselves and not talk mode as often. Or how can we not talk mode as often? It's a whole return to analog future or past, whichever one I say, a way for us to look into that. We become human.
The branch of the technological aspect in this is definitely has a big part to play in this kind of thinking. And, what I'm observing, what I'm observing, like practically, is that we have moved into this age very quickly. I did not grow up in it, but my children have. Now, what is happening at the same time is while they are like versed in all those technological things, and now they start to look into the world outside that specific device and find that there is more to it, and go deep, go and build and plant gardens and take care of animals and live in a community with others, build community gardens for the world around them, and so on. So I don't see it as a negative aspect. I think there is hope. And I think that is where we have to focus on. So I don't see the concept of posthumanism as kind of like killing the man, killing the human, but becoming actually fully human in that sense. Maybe I can point to the last quote here, and this is Francesca Ferrando, who is working specifically with transhumanism and the technological aspects of this as a philosopher. And I think you have that on the page that I submitted. In the age of the Anthropocene, posthumanism is required to develop daily post-anthropocentric ethics of living based on an integral investment of its own post-dualistic process on ontological premises. Spirituality is a precious resource for this important task as a practice, which is enacted in each moment of being. The ultimate post-dualism of the posthuman resides in full awareness, envisioning desirable posthuman modes of existence as a path of self-discovery. Once the self has been recognized as the others within, that is when the fully human part is recognized. And in that sense, I believe the biblical story has a lot to say. In that sense, the biblical story tells us that humans have always been post-human.
So how would you identify what the Bible in your Old Testament particularly has to contribute to the discussion of the lore of World Wide Web and technology in making us more mechanical or digital? Is there something more that the Old Testament has to give us to enrich that, or is the post-human, is it a digital human?
Maybe there is somebody here who has a pacemaker.
But whether we're reduced to these mechanical
No,
functions.
the ideal of posthumanism is not to reduce, it is to build up, it is to improve, right? And not to destroy. And if we understand that concept, then that is probably a possibility we could study further.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question here and then that. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate you brought in transhumanism just now. I think that's a important aspect here. And like you, I see a lot of promise there. But I also wonder, can we grasping, become something greater than what we are now experiencing fall, like in Genesis 3, is it all sunshine and roses at the end of Elon Musk's Rainbow to Mars? Or could we have, could we have some kind of a technological post-human fall, along the lines of Genesis 3 as well? Or even one where we try to get more integrated to the earth and make mistakes in that regard too. I mean, I'm asking rhetorically, of course, but I'd be interested to hear your response.
Again, please, I'm not the expert.
Yeah.
I'm working with you on these things.
Sure.
And probably there are several here who know a lot more than I do on it. So to talk, see that this is the dilemma I believe we are in when we go to Genesis 3 and have it pre-made for us, have it like set. This is fall, this is sin, and that is the challenge, of course. So there is another huge aspect of our way of doing theology and understanding these texts that need to be reworked. First of all, there is no fall in Genesis 3. In fact, there is no sin in Genesis 3 either. I have not found that word in Genesis 3 at all. And my students don't. I asked them. There is nakedness, there is shame, and there is fear. And that is something that is common to all humanity. And that is the binding element of humanity.
Okay, we have time for one more question and a short question and a short answer, and then we have to call this session to an end. Yes.
Thank you for your paper. So I wonder about the naming of the atoms. It's usually that's a cover this forbidden areas in only one animal who doesn't name. So, what naming and knowing are very closely related together. Know something you know that thing. I think maybe it should be seen more as an epistemological the descriptive adequacy of the process of making it. I think a power relation perceiving what reality is like.
Yeah.
And very optimistic.
And by the way, if you go with the language of the text, it is not said that the man actually did name the animals at all. As far as I read the text, he brought them to him, it says, to see what he would name them.
And whatever he thought that was his name.
You know?
Okay, do you have a concluding word for us before we as we end?
Okay, I would like just to put out the suggestion that I think there is a lot of concern, a lot of fear in the Christian and in the theological world about this philosophical concepts like the transhumanism with the technology, then the underpinning philosophy of it, and so on. It is, from my perspective, there is not a good way to stand up and reject something that is like coming at us like a tsunami. It is better to see what possibilities we have to work inside it.
Let's thank